May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
Well, friends, the other day I was out and about with the family and I saw this little kid. I mean, this kid was probably 2.5 years old with his mom, and he had a mask on. And I had this thought. I was like, can you imagine when you're just entering into consciousness and you're putting a mask on, how you actually think that's how the world is, right? That's your worldview. And I started kind of to think about like what it would be like to think that that's how the world works. And then when the masks come off, God willing, that day is coming, when the masks come off, to feel like, you know, what that must feel like. All of a sudden, you don't have to wear this anymore. And my sister-in-law, she commented, she said that she feels like there's a whole generation of germaphobes that are being raised. You know, you're just like gonna be, because these are such formative years. So really fascinating. Now, the reason I share that with you is because for the rest of us, we feel like there is a huge difference between what life used to look pre-COVID and what life is like now. We know the difference. We feel the tension of that. And a couple of weeks ago, you'll remember in one of my videos, I invited you to share with me some of the topics that you would be relevant to you, that you'd like to hear me reflect on from the perspective of Scripture. And more than several of you, I mean, it was several people, said we'd like to just hear a little bit about how hope in the midst of waiting, how that works, because we feel like our lives are in a holding pattern. And it's like we're waiting on life to start again. So what do we do while we wait? And how do you have hope while we wait? So that's what my sermon is about today. And the sermon is entitled Live Now. And I'm going to expand on this and share some thoughts with you today. So I think it's really clear that COVID has amplified a fundamental reality in life. It's like it's taken something that is true and it's dialed it up to a 10. And what is true is that we're always in a state of waiting somehow. There's always something that we're waiting on, except COVID has made it like so extreme. Now we're all so mindful of we're waiting for something to change. So if I were to ask you right now, what are you waiting on? Just list anything that comes to your mind in your life that you feel is not complete, that you're waiting on, all the way from waiting on a package to come in the mail that I'm really excited about, to a health situation, to COVID, and everything in between. I bet you anything, if you were just to think about the things you're waiting on in life, you would rattle off at least 5 things right off the top of your head. And I think this is just from an experiential, phenomenological kind of perspective. We all know this on a deep level. We're always waiting on something. That's just the way life is. Now, it's the French philosopher Voltaire who once said, "We never live. We are always in the expectation of living." So just let that sink in for a second. We never live. We are always in the expectation of living. And I think that this axiom has a familiar ring to it when we think of our own lives. And I want to ask, do you ever feel like the best version of your life is yet to come? Like, do you ever feel like you wake up and you're like, I can't believe I'm still here in this one place, and you're waiting on something that you've been waiting on maybe for a long time to happen so that you can really start living. And you know, every single one of us has our own answer to what that might be. We never live, but we're always in the expectation of living. More money, a relationship that we're hoping to transpire, a health situation that's chronic that we hope to get rid of. So what's interesting about this axiom by Voltaire is that when you think about it literally, it's not true. We never live. We're always in the expectation of living. Because you could say, when you think about just the basic definition of life, as in it's the opposite of death, right? You breathe, There's activity, there's cellular reproduction. That's what life is. The truth is we are actually living, you know, but what Voltaire is talking about is something qualitatively different. He's not just talking about what the opposite of death is. He's talking about something different, something that when I say, what does it mean to truly live? We all know on a deep level that we're not just talking about basic existence, we're talking about something more than that. Now, I asked Carl to put this, this slide up for us, because I want to talk a little bit about an idea that we have of what really living looks like. Now, this will bring you back to your college or high school years of basic psychology. This Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a psychological, it's a theory of psychology that he came up with in the 40s. And if you just kind of look at this, maybe you're familiar with it, maybe you're not. But let me just walk us through it really fast. The fundamental idea is that you, according to Maslow, is that you can't actually move up this thing unless you have basic needs met. So you start with the most basic physiological needs. Food, water, warmth, rest. Those are the fundamental things that we need. If we have those covered, then the next tier of needs that we have are for security and for safety. So once your basic survival is intact, then there's other level of needs. Once you kind of have security and safety as well as your physiological needs met, then there's this other tier, and it's kind of linear, where there's a need for belonging and love. Intimate relationships, friends, moving up. When those are covered, then you kind of move up to prestige, feelings of accomplishment, those esteem needs. And then finally at the very top, when all those things are covered, then you are free to do what he calls self-actualize. This is achieving one's full potential, including creative activities. Okay, Carl, you can come back to the big screen. Now, I think typically when we think about really living, in our minds, we think of it similar to how Maslow has articulated this hierarchy of needs. It's this idea of kind of getting all of our needs met, and then finally we can just have life. We can self-actualize, we can, you know, there's not a care in the world because we have all of those other pieces taken care of. The problem, unfortunately, with this idea, if we see it as linear, I, by the way, refer to Maslow's hierarchy of needs all the time because I think there's so much to this. But when we think of it as linear, like you can't actually get to that place of really living, self-actualization until you've gotten all of your other needs met, until you've checked off all the boxes, is that it's misleading. Because then it makes sense that you would never really live, because there's always going to be something that's missing, no matter what. There's always going to be something that is not ideal in our lives. And so that's the problem with this idea of we never live, we're always in the expectation of living, we're always waiting on something to change so that we can finally rest and be able to take a deep breath and live. So in John chapter 10, verse 10, and you've heard me preach on this many times, Jesus says, I came so that you may have life and have it more abundantly. I think it's interesting through this lens, Jesus didn't say, I came to clear away all of the obstacles in your life, all of the things that are uncomfortable, so that you can finally thrive. But instead, Jesus says, I came so that you may have life and have it more abundantly. So where you are, here and now, in the midst of your realities and adversities, that you can have abundant life. So the idea isn't that you're waiting for your life to begin, it's live now. And this was one of the biggest messages of the kingdom of God. It isn't just wait for something to happen in the future. It's the kingdom of God is here now. Live now. One of the most annoying things in life, if you've ever tried to watch a YouTube video or watch your favorite show on Netflix, is that little circle that's spinning in the middle of your screen. You know what I'm talking about? I see you guys nodding your heads. It's the thing that says buffering. It is literally one of the most annoying things. It's like you're so excited to watch something and then it just starts buffering. And everybody who does anything with electronics knows this. And the idea behind this buffering thing is like you're waiting to enjoy this thing, and there's this interruption. And the interruption is just, you don't know how long it's going to be. You kind of are hoping that if your internet connection is good enough, it's going to pick up, and then you can kind of move through with what it is that you want to watch. And often I feel like we think of these disruptions in life or waiting, periods of waiting. We think of them as buffering. It's like these are disruptions or interruptions to what otherwise would be a smooth life. Life would be great if I just had this thing, if this thing came together, if I wasn't waiting on this. And unfortunately, that's the piece that I think keeps us stuck when we say, I'm waiting on life to start up again after the pandemic, is because we're kind of coming at it with that mentality. But today I want to help shift this for us. In the reading that Rob read from Romans, Paul says this. He says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may discern what the will of God is. Let me just read that one more time. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God. So what I want to do today, I want to put the rest of this talk in the context of this teaching, that the only way to really come to a place of understanding abundant life and living now in the midst of our realities, the only way to get there is by a renewing of our minds. So not conforming to this world's perspectives, but actually having a paradigm shift that the Spirit of God is leading us into. So specifically what I'm talking about is the world thinks that abundant life is a product of your circumstances, as we've been talking. So abundant life is something that you get once you've checked all your boxes and you can say, not a care in the world. The Spirit, on the other hand, says abundant life is possible no matter your circumstances. And as you hear that, I don't know if you feel the same way as I do, like just this moment of, like you just want to breathe out and go, really, is that even possible? That the Spirit says there's always going to be waiting. Waiting is a reality of life. If you look through the scriptures, there's not a single person in scripture who wasn't waiting for something. We're always waiting, but what you don't have to wait for, you don't have to wait on your life to start. You don't have to wait to be fully alive here and now. Now, in the gospel, fully alive, to be fully alive, to live, is not the absence of adversity. It's the presence of purpose. So it's not the absence of things that are making that are like kind of pausing my life, that are buffering to an otherwise smooth sailing life. It's the presence of purpose. That the deepest sense of fulfillment that we get in life isn't when we're doing nothing, when there isn't a care in the world, right? We kind of think of this idyllic, just sitting on an island and just relaxing, there's not a care in the world. That's not when we have the deepest sense of fulfillment in life, but rather the deepest fulfillment is when we do care, when we feel like our existence is making a difference, when it's inspiring change, when we're creating beauty, when we're bringing healing. That's when we feel fully alive. Fully alive isn't the absence of adversity, it's the presence of purpose. It's not passively waiting around for that day when we don't have to wait anymore. Hashtag the pandemic. For that day when our lives and the world will somehow become complete. But to be fully alive is to play a part in that completion. It's to feel like you are a part of that positive, creative, restorative, liberating energy that is already at work in the world. So I hope that you're seeing this distinction, that being fully alive isn't something that happens when everything is complete, but it's feeling like you are a part of that process of completion. Now, I'm going to close and give us something very practical, and then I'm going to tell a story and then end. So what this is not about, when I talk about the presence of purpose, I'm not talking about that anxiety-producing big question, what is my purpose in life? Which I think that if you start thinking about, like, okay, Sari said that the fulfillment that we get really living fully now is when we find our purpose in life. Now I got to go out and find what my purpose is. That's just another example of waiting around for something to happen so that you can be happy. This is not what I'm talking about. And I feel like anytime we really over-focus on ourselves in that sense, we're going to find something missing. What I'm talking about today is actually starting small. When I say that the gospel's idea of being fully alive isn't the absence of adversity, it's the presence of purpose. What I'm talking about is starting with a simple question. And the question is this. And I believe, friends, that this is a Bible truth that we can let sink in, and it will change our lives. Here's the question. How can I use what I have to move this forward? And that's the question that I want us to just soak in today, and I hope use it. How can I use what I have? My time, my talent, my treasure. How can I use what I have to move this forward? Now, this can be whatever it is that you care about. It can be the thing that you're waiting on. It can be personal. It can be bigger than you. But it's how can I use what I have to move this forward? So with the pandemic, we know that we want to get to a place where we're past this whole thing. That's kind of the goal. So a way of cultivating purpose is saying, how can I use what I have to move this forward? Where can I invest some time? What practices can I adopt? Who can I reach out to who might be struggling during this pandemic, who is really experiencing the lack of life? How can I use what I have? When you think about a relationship that is incomplete or something that is not feeling right at this point, when you think nationally, we've been doing these wonderful Souls to the Polls thing of writing letters. It's not passively waiting to find out who the next president's going to be. How can I use what I have to move this forward? These are the places where the waiting actually becomes the cradle for vision. And we find ourselves purposeful in the midst of the waiting. Now, last week, my daughter was playing her guitar. She's a beginner guitar player, and she's so excited because she has all these songs that she loves, and she's hearing them now starting to come together. So it's not classical guitar. It's just a pop guitarist teacher who's teaching her how to play these songs she loves. Now, if you know anything about the guitar, you know that it takes time to get used to pressing those strings down. And in the beginning, it just sounds like you're playing on cardboard, right? It's just like there's really no ring to it. And she's getting better and better. But the other day, I taught her these chords to the song that she really wants to learn. And it wasn't sounding the way she wanted it to sound. And so she said, Baba, which is dad in Arabic. She goes, Baba, it doesn't sound right. And I'm like, I looked at the chords she was playing, and I was like, you're playing the right chords. You're playing the right thing. She's like, but it doesn't sound right. And so I got down on my knees, and I just looked at her, and I said, okay, play the chords for me one more time. And she played them. I was like, that's perfect. And she played the next one. That's great. And I looked at her and I said, I know it doesn't sound right, but I promise if you just keep doing what you're doing, you keep at it, it'll start more and more sounding just the way you want it to sound. And the reason I am bringing up this story is because I feel like often when we practice the things that the gospel calls us to, we're looking for this immediate feeling of like, man, my life is just so much better. You know, it's awesome. But the truth is that the only way for us to kind of really benefit from this sense of abundant life is when we practice this purpose mindset. It's similar to what I've talked about in the past with generosity. There's this paradox that the more generous we are, the more we feel like our lives are enriched. The more we give away, the more enriched we are. It's similar with this. is that the more we practice something that puts us out there, the more we feel inwardly satisfied and full. So do you feel like you're playing all the right notes and you're not feeling like things are changing for you? My message to us today is the same as it is for my daughter. You're playing all the right notes. Just keep doing it, and you will benefit from this in your life. So coming back to the sermon title, my message today is Live Now. How do we find hope in the midst of the pandemic or these other areas in which we're waiting in life? The answer is stop waiting. There's a lot of things we can't control. A lot of things are out of our hands. But to live a purposeful life in the midst of our circumstances, that's something we don't have to wait for. Let's pray. Loving God, I thank you so much for being a God who cares about life, and that you came to show us that life isn't something that happens after we die or on the other end of our trials and our tribulations and struggles. But life is something that is happening all around us right now, and it's available here and now. So for each of us, as we think about those parts of our lives that are not working well, those relationships where there's tension, the things that are falling apart, those indefinite spaces of waiting that are leaving us on edge. I pray, God, today that we would hear the message of hope, that there is such ripeness in those spaces for us to experience life to the fullest, because it's in the mess and it's in the incomplete where vision is born. May your Spirit rest upon us today, and we ask this in your holy name.